The sun rose over the naval amphibious base Coronado, painting the horizon in a gradient of gold and crimson. Seagulls cried overhead, gliding across the vast expanse of the Pacific, their calls mingling with the distant hum of military jets practicing low-level maneuvers. The salty breeze carried the sharp tang of the ocean and the faint, metallic scent of naval hardware, a smell that instantly commanded attention, even from civilians. For most recruits, it was a familiar environment. For Maya Rourke, it was entirely foreign and yet strangely magnetic. Maya adjusted the strap of her small duffel bag, feeling the weight of her laptop and personal gear. She was a civilian analyst with the Defense Intelligence Agency, trained in analyzing patterns, decoding intelligence, and connecting dots that often went unnoticed. Combat. That was not her domain, not in theory. But she had insisted on attending this joint training program, a 2-week immersion designed to teach intelligence officers the nuances of working alongside Navy SEAL teams. She had insisted because she knew the future of warfare, counterterrorism, and clandestine operations relied on seamless cooperation between analysts and operators. Sitting behind a desk was no longer enough. She had to understand the battlefield firsthand. As she walked toward the administrative building, she noticed the early morning chaos of recruits stretching, running, and practicing drills. Most were already in full gear, moving with a confidence that bordered on arrogance, honed over years of training and combat experience. Their bodies were honed like finely tuned machines, their eyes sharp and calculating. Among them, a few glances flickered in her direction, barely concealed, a mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and disdain. Maya felt their judgment immediately, subtle, silent, yet unmistakable. The male-dominated environment was a test, and she knew it. Chief Petty Officer Blake Sawyer leaned casually against a railing, observing without moving a muscle. His arms were crossed over a broad chest, the sleeves of his black tactical shirt rolled up to reveal thick, sinewy forearms, scarred from years of operations. He had seen dozens of trainees arrive with bravado that quickly evaporated under pressure, and he could already sense the subtle tension between Maya and the others. There was a calmness about her, quiet, almost imperceptible, but noticeable to someone trained to detect potential in high-stress situations. Sawyer made a mental note. She would either crumble under the first wave of hostility or surprise everyone. Inside the administrative building, Maya signed in, her hands steady, her demeanor composed. She had prepared for this mentally, reviewing procedures, memorizing standard-issue protocols, and brushing up on physical conditioning. She had trained in self-defense, but she was acutely aware that nothing could replicate the intensity of SEAL training. Still, she exuded a confidence that many of the hardened recruits found irritating, not because she was threatening, but because her calm defiance challenged their assumptions. The instructors, all decorated veterans with years of experience in clandestine operations, briefed the group. The program would include stress simulations, close-quarters combat training, weapons retention exercises, and mock capture scenarios designed to push trainees to their limits. "This isn't a game," one of the instructors emphasized, scanning the room. "You will be tested physically, mentally, and emotionally. Respect the rules, respect your peers, and respect the line between life and simulated threat." His gaze lingered on Maya for a fraction longer than the others, perhaps nodding her civilian status but also something else, a spark of resolve. As the morning progressed, recruits were paired off for initial exercises. The dynamic was immediately apparent. Maya found herself paired with 3 men who had clearly decided she did not belong: Dixon, Harper, and Vance. Their smirks were subtle, barely noticeable if one didn't look closely, but Maya saw them. She could feel their judgment, their silent challenge. They had already begun whispering among themselves, exchanging small gestures, sizing her up. It was the kind of rivalry she had expected, and it did not faze her. Instead, it fueled her determination to prove herself not to them, but to herself. By mid-morning, the group moved outdoors for physical conditioning. The sun had climbed higher, warming the sand beneath their boots. Maya struggled slightly at first, her muscles unfamiliar with this kind of endurance training, but she adapted quickly. Her movements were precise, deliberate, and calculated, not the fluid efficiency of a trained SEAL, but enough to demonstrate competence. Dixon and his two friends watched with thinly veiled incredulity. Some of the other recruits were impressed. A few whispered encouragement, but the trio's scorn only sharpened. Sawyer observed quietly from a distance, analyzing the team dynamics and nodding the potential risk. Later, the group assembled in a circle for a briefing on the first simulation, a mock capture and escape exercise. Maya listened carefully as the instructors explained the rules. Each team would take turns simulating both captor and captive roles. It was designed to teach situational awareness, restraint, and mental fortitude under controlled stress. Maya's team assignment immediately raised a red flag. She would be in the same group as the hostile trio. She sensed the subtle shift in the air, the tension barely masked by rehearsed professionalism. The walk to the training area was tense. The trio exchanged knowing glances and smirked under their breath, whispering about her desk job background and lack of real experience. Maya ignored them outwardly, but internally she cataloged each movement, each gesture, each subtle intimidation tactic. It was data human intelligence in real time. Sawyer, 100 meters away, noticed the behavior. He did not intervene yet. He was patient, letting the situation develop while mentally preparing for any escalation. As the sun climbed toward midday, the warehouse simulation area came into view. The abandoned facility had been repurposed with padded walls, metal doors, and mock interrogation rooms. Its corners were dark, its hallways maze-like, designed to simulate disorientation and stress. Maya's heart beat faster, not from fear but from anticipation. She knew the coming hours would test her physical endurance, mental sharpness, and emotional resilience. For the first time in her professional career, she felt a surge of adrenaline similar to what she imagined her SEAL counterparts experienced daily. Sawyer watched from a distance, nodding her every move, measuring her composure, and anticipating the challenges she would face. The hostile trio had no idea that an unseen observer was already gauging their intentions. Every smirk, every whispered insult, every subtle gesture would soon be tested against the steel of discipline, experience, and instinct. In that moment, the stage was set, a confrontation that would push boundaries, reveal character, and ultimately redefine what respect, courage, and skill truly meant. Maya stepped toward the warehouse entrance, her uniform crisp, her demeanor calm, her mind alert. She did not know precisely what awaited her inside, but she knew one thing. She was not here to fail, and she was not alone. Somewhere in the shadows, Sawyer's eyes followed, ready to act, ready to protect, ready to demonstrate the precision and decisiveness that only a Navy SEAL could command. The tension was palpable. The game had begun. And for Maya, this was only the beginning. The warehouse's metal doors groaned as Maya and her assigned team stepped inside, the echoes bouncing off the high ceilings and stark concrete walls. The smell of oil, dust, and mildew mingled with the faint tang of sweat from previous trainees, creating an atmosphere that seemed designed to heighten unease. Maya's pulse quickened slightly, but she kept her breathing steady. She had been trained to maintain control, even under stress, and she reminded herself that fear was not weakness. It was a tool if harnessed properly. Dixon, Harper, and Vance immediately fell into their informal positions, circling her as though she were prey in a hunting exercise. Their smirks were subtle, but the air between them bristled with hostility. Dixon leaned casually against a pillar, his eyes scanning Maya from head to toe, sizing her up. Harper and Vance exchanged glances, then whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "She won't last an hour." Maya held her composure, her eyes following every slight movement, her mind cataloging details, memorizing patterns. Sawyer, standing near the observation window, did not intervene. He simply watched, the shadow of a frown creasing his weathered face. He had seen this type of behavior countless times, hostility disguised as jest, testing the limits of an outsider's tolerance. His instincts screamed that this would escalate unless someone acted decisively. Yet he allowed the tension to play out, knowing that immediate intervention could disrupt both training dynamics and authentic reactions. He trusted Maya to navigate her first test, while he prepared to act if the situation crossed the line. The instructors, seasoned veterans with years of operational experience, gave the teams their first scenario, a mock capture and interrogation exercise designed to push captives into thinking and reacting under stress. Maya was assigned the role of the captured operative, forced to navigate the tight space while maintaining awareness of her surroundings. Dixon, Harper, and Vance were instructed to simulate control, but their intentions were increasingly personal. They stepped closer than necessary, their whispers cutting like knives. "Come on, show us what you've got, desk jockey," Dixon sneered, his voice low but threatening. Harper and Vance chuckled quietly as though to reinforce his dominance. Maya's mind raced. She could not react physically yet. The instructors monitored every move, and a wrong action could be considered misconduct. She held her ground, maintaining eye contact with Dixon, projecting confidence she did not yet fully feel. Inside, adrenaline surged, sharpening her senses. Every sound, every shadow, every muscle twitch became data, every movement a potential cue for survival. The trio began to escalate the intimidation subtly. Harper pressed a hand against Maya's shoulder, just enough to block her movement, while Dixon circled behind her, moving the tip of the dull training knife along her sleeve. It was deliberate, slow, meant to elicit fear while testing boundaries. Maya's heart thudded, but she breathed steadily, focusing on observation rather than reaction. Her mind analyzed angles of escape, potential leverage points, and weak spots in the attacker's stance. Tension in the warehouse thickened, almost tactile. Other teams continued exercises nearby, the muffled shouts and metallic clangs forming a background of controlled chaos. Maya's senses sharpened. She noted the direction of the sounds, the position of doorways, the pattern of light streaming through narrow windows. Each observation built a mental map that could mean the difference between control and vulnerability. Even as fear flickered, it was matched by a growing determination. She would not let herself be cowed. Sawyer's presence, though unseen by the trio, was a quiet anchor in the scenario. He had learned the art of patience in high-stakes situations. Immediate action was rarely necessary. Observation, mental mapping, and readiness often ensured far greater outcomes. He noted the angle at which the knife was being held, the body language of the aggressors, and the subtle shifts in Maya's posture. He recognized that her calm was deliberate, trained, and genuine, not just bravado. That calm, coupled with her intelligence and situational awareness, meant she could endure far longer than most expected. Dixon, growing frustrated at her lack of fear, stepped closer. The tip of the blade traced a line across her uniform, slicing fabric but causing no injury. Maya's breath caught for a fraction of a second, then steadied. Her hands remained free at her sides, poised to react if necessary, though she knew the immediate goal was patience, not confrontation. "Stay still," Dixon muttered, his tone harsher now, testing the threshold. Harper and Vance mirrored his actions, holding her arms lightly but firmly, signaling control. It was a game of intimidation, but Maya understood that games could turn dangerous in an instant. Her mind shifted into analytical mode. Every muscle in their bodies conveyed intent. Dixon's dominant posture, Harper's subtle tension in his grip, Vance's shifting weight. Maya calculated angles, potential movement patterns, and the timing needed to create space if the moment came. She remembered tactical lessons from prior briefings. Small, controlled movements, awareness of leverage, and mental discipline were often more effective than brute force. The scenario had transformed into a genuine test of mental resilience, and she met it quietly, internally preparing for the inevitable. Meanwhile, Sawyer moved closer, his steps silent, calculated. He positioned himself outside the immediate field of view, ready to intervene. His mind assessed distances, potential obstacles, and the possible escalation. Years of experience taught him to act decisively, with minimal force, neutralizing threats in seconds. He trusted Maya's instincts but would not allow the situation to deteriorate further. Every fiber of his being was alert. He could feel the tension radiating from the trio, the delicate line between simulated training and real aggression. Minutes stretched, though they felt like hours. Maya's determination was visible now, subtle yet unmistakable. Her posture, calm breathing, and focused gaze sent signals even Dixon subconsciously registered. She was not helpless, not fearful, not broken. The trio's confidence wavered imperceptibly, though they tried to mask it. Tension mounted as the scenario approached a critical point. One wrong move could spark chaos. One loss of control could cause real injury. Finally, the moment before the line would be crossed arrived. Dixon raised the dull training knife slightly higher, moving with intent that went beyond training protocol. Harper tightened his grip on her arm, and Vance mirrored the movement. Maya's body tensed, ready to react if necessary, but her mind remained calm. Observation and awareness had given her an advantage. She understood that someone with the skill to intervene was near, unseen, yet present. Every instinct screamed caution, but also readiness. Sawyer's presence, his silent observation, and Maya's composed resilience created an unspoken balance. The hostile trio had underestimated her resolve and underestimated the unseen guardian nearby. The first true test of boundaries, intimidation, and resilience had begun, setting the stage for a confrontation that would change perceptions, earn respect, and define the limits of control. Every second felt suspended in tension, each breath measured, every movement deliberate. The game of dominance, patience, and survival had entered its most critical phase. The warehouse was dimly lit, the faint rays of sunlight slicing through the grime-coated windows and illuminating dust motes that danced lazily in the air. Concrete walls and steel beams created a labyrinthine environment, echoing every footstep, every whisper, every shuffle of cloth. Maya Rourke's pulse accelerated, not from fear, but from acute awareness. Every sound was amplified, every shadow suggested potential movement. This was the perfect environment for a high-intensity training exercise, yet the atmosphere carried a tension beyond simulation. Her mind cataloged every detail, mentally mapping exit routes, potential hazards, and the positions of her team. Dixon, Harper, and Vance moved with a deceptive calm, their casual smirks masking a dangerous edge. Their previous attempts at intimidation had failed to provoke overt fear, which only seemed to fuel their determination. "You're too composed," Dixon muttered, loud enough for Maya to hear. Harper and Vance nodded, exchanging quick, conspiratorial glances. They circled her slowly, deliberately restricting her movements. Every subtle adjustment of weight, every minor shift in stance was calculated to assert dominance. Maya could feel the tension building, a coiled energy that could snap at any moment. Maya's senses, sharpened by years of analytical work and basic tactical training, went into overdrive. She noted Dixon's slight lean to the right, Harper's tightening grip on his own sleeve, and Vance's shifting weight from left foot to right. Each detail became data points, indicators of intent, timing, and potential aggression. She adjusted her stance, keeping her hands free and her movements minimal, careful to avoid giving them any justification for escalation. Sawyer, stationed near a secondary entrance, observed silently. His presence was unnoticed, but every instinct told him to be ready. He had seen hostile dynamics like this countless times. Civilians thrust into military environments often became targets for assertion tests. He understood that the trio was testing both the boundaries of protocol and the limits of Maya's resilience. He remained patient, letting events unfold while preparing for immediate intervention. The goal was not only to protect Maya, but to allow her to demonstrate mental discipline and composure under duress. The team had been given the task of simulating a capture scenario, which required coordination, control, and restraint. But Dixon, Harper, and Vance were less concerned with training objectives and more interested in asserting power. Dixon waved the dull training knife loosely in front of Maya, just enough to elicit awareness, but not enough to cause harm. Harper placed a hand on her shoulder under the pretense of control, while Vance mirrored his movements. Maya's mind cataloged the subtleties, the tension in their grips, the angles of their feet, and the slight widening of eyes that betrayed impatience. Every instinct told her to remain calm, to conserve energy, to observe rather than react. She knew that in high-stakes situations, a single misstep could have consequences far greater than embarrassment. Training drills often blurred the lines between stress and danger, but Maya's focus was unwavering. She reminded herself that patience, awareness, and composure could neutralize aggression even without immediate physical response. The warehouse seemed to close in around them. Shadows pooled in corners, and the sound of distant training exercises created a surreal backdrop: muffled shouts, metallic clanging, the occasional thud of bodies moving through simulated combat zones. Each sound heightened Maya's awareness, forcing her to maintain focus on both her immediate environment and the subtle cues from the hostile trio. Every shift of weight, every change in breathing, every glance could indicate intent. She remained alert, calculating, prepared to react if necessary, but also aware that Sawyer's presence provided a layer of security. Dixon's patience began to waver. His smirk flickered into a subtle scowl as he realized Maya was not reacting as expected. "Relax, it's just training," he said, attempting to normalize his own aggression. Harper's grip tightened, and Vance's stance shifted closer, subconsciously revealing their growing frustration. Maya remained calm, her posture steady, her breathing measured. Inside, adrenaline coursed through her veins, heightening her perception, but she projected outwardly a controlled stillness that unsettled the trio more than any display of fear would have. The instructors had positioned themselves strategically around the warehouse, observing the teams and evaluating both technique and composure. They were trained to recognize genuine stress responses versus calculated mental resilience. Maya's performance, measured yet attentive, began to draw subtle attention. Even within the confines of the hostile trio's intimidation, she demonstrated situational awareness, patience, and an ability to anticipate movements, traits essential for operatives in the field. Maya's mind raced, anticipating potential escalation. She considered the physics of leverage, the angles of potential movement, and the limited space around her. Even if forced to defend herself physically, she calculated the minimal motions necessary to create space or neutralize pressure. Her analytical training merged with instinct, forming a tactical awareness that few could match without extensive field experience. Yet she remained outwardly composed, avoiding any aggressive gestures that could trigger a disciplinary response from instructors. The trio grew increasingly restless, their subtle intimidation tactics escalating into more invasive gestures. Harper pressed slightly harder against her shoulder, and Vance shifted to block potential movement. Dixon twirled the training knife in his hand, the edge brushing against the fabric of Maya's uniform. It was a deliberate, provocative motion, enough to elicit stress, but not immediate injury. Maya's pulse quickened imperceptibly, her muscles ready for action, her mind calculating escape options, angles, and timing. Outside the main simulation area, Sawyer moved silently along the perimeter, narrowing the distance without drawing attention. He was prepared for immediate intervention, watching the trio's movements, reading their body language, and anticipating potential escalation. Years of operational experience had taught him that patience and observation often allowed for more precise, controlled outcomes. He knew that Maya's composure would only be effective if someone was ready to intervene decisively, at the exact moment boundaries were crossed. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. The trio's frustration became increasingly evident. Subtle twitches, micro-expressions of impatience, and slight misalignments in their stance indicated rising tension. Maya maintained focus, scanning exits, potential obstacles, and the positions of other trainees. She calculated each movement with precision, aware that any physical engagement would require perfect timing to avoid harm. The situation had evolved from a controlled simulation into a genuine test of composure, awareness, and mental resilience. The final moment before escalation approached. Dixon raised the training knife slightly, shifting his weight forward, his grin fading into a more menacing expression. Harper's grip tightened subtly, and Vance mirrored the shift. Maya's body tensed in response, poised to react if necessary, but her mind remained clear. Observation and strategic patience had become her tools, her awareness her weapon. Outside, Sawyer's presence remained invisible yet pivotal, ready to intervene with precision, control, and decisive action. In that warehouse, the stage was set. Maya had navigated initial intimidation with composure and mental clarity, earning an unspoken recognition from the instructors and the observers. The hostile trio, however, had underestimated her resolve and the unseen watchful eye that would soon act. Every breath, every heartbeat, every subtle movement built toward a confrontation that would redefine respect, skill, and boundaries within the team. The line between training and real danger was approaching, and Maya's resilience would be tested as never before. The warehouse air seemed heavier now, thick with tension that clung to every surface. Dust swirled lazily in the pale shafts of sunlight, illuminated only when disturbed by a subtle shift of movement. Maya Rourke's senses were razor-sharp, each creak of the metal floor and distant echo a cue to the unfolding danger. The hostile trio had grown restless, their earlier smirks replaced by subtle signs of impatience and aggression. Dixon's jaw clenched, Harper's fingers flexed slightly, and Vance's shoulders tensed. Maya knew the boundaries were about to be crossed. This was no longer a controlled simulation. Dixon advanced deliberately, twirling the dull training knife in his hand. "Relax," he murmured, more as a threat than reassurance. Harper closed in from the side, pressing lightly against her shoulder, while Vance positioned himself strategically behind her, cutting off potential movement. The pretense of training had vanished. The intimidation was now personal. Maya's heart beat steadily, though adrenaline coursed through her veins. She remained calm outwardly, though every muscle in her body was coiled, prepared to react. Her mind cataloged every detail in real time. Dixon's stance, angled slightly to leverage intimidation, suggested he expected compliance. Harper's grip, deceptively light, allowed him subtle control while maintaining plausible deniability. Vance mirrored movements to prevent escape, subtly shifting weight to reinforce the trio's dominance. Maya recognized these micro-expressions, the small cues that revealed intent beyond words. It was all data, and her brain processed it with the precision of an analyst tracking high-risk assets. "Stay still," Dixon hissed, pressing the knife tip against her shoulder. The dull edge grazed the fabric of her uniform, slicing through the material without breaking the skin. Harper tightened his hold slightly, a subtle, almost imperceptible increase of pressure, while Vance mirrored the movement to ensure control. Maya's breath caught for an instant, the faintest flicker of fear passing through her system, quickly replaced by a controlled focus. She analyzed the situation, angles, spacing, reaction time, preparing for the moment when immediate action might be required. Sawyer's presence outside the immediate view was a silent anchor. He moved with precision, closing the distance while remaining unseen, each step calculated for speed, silence, and positioning. He observed the trio's micro-movements, reading the subtle signs of tension and the indicators that the situation could escalate into actual harm. Years of experience had taught him patience. Intervention had to be decisive, fast, and controlled. He waited for the exact moment, knowing that hesitation or miscalculation could result in unnecessary injury. Inside, the trio's behavior escalated in subtle ways. Dixon dragged the tip of the knife along Maya's sleeve, slicing the uniform further. Harper leaned slightly harder into her shoulder, using minimal pressure to assert dominance while claiming it was part of the drill. Vance mirrored these actions, creating a physical containment that seemed both casual and threatening. Every second felt drawn out, stretching tension across space and time. Maya's mind raced, calculating leverage points, escape paths, and angles of intervention while maintaining perfect outward composure. Her internal dialogue was a mix of strategy and mental discipline. Panic was a luxury she could not afford. Outward fear would have fueled the trio's confidence. Each movement, each micro-expression was being cataloged as data for potential reaction. Maya's tactical awareness sharpened as adrenaline surged, her body ready, her mind calculating, her emotions carefully controlled. She understood that survival in this moment relied not on immediate physical force, but on composure, observation, and readiness to exploit any opportunity. The trio's impatience was growing. Dixon's smirk had faded, replaced by a subtle sneer, his eyes narrowing in irritation at her lack of visible fear. Harper and Vance exchanged quick glances, their posture stiffening, signaling escalating frustration. Maya recognized the classic pattern, intimidation tactics intensifying as perceived control diminishes. Her training and mental discipline had prepared her for analysis under pressure, but this was different. This was an unsanctioned test of her resilience, conducted by peers rather than instructors. The warehouse seemed to shrink around her. The metallic scent of machinery, dust, and sweat mixed in the air, a sensory overload that heightened every perception. Sunlight pierced narrow windows, casting harsh shadows that flickered across the concrete floors. Every element added to the tension, amplifying the stakes in what had begun as a standard training scenario. Maya's body was tense, muscles coiled, ready to spring, yet her outward posture remained deceptively calm, a testament to her control. Then Harper's grip subtly shifted, increasing pressure against her shoulder while Dixon moved the knife closer to her collarbone. The slice through her uniform now felt deliberate, an act of intimidation meant to provoke a reaction. Maya's mind cataloged the moment, recognizing the danger. She adjusted her stance, micro-adjustments to weight and balance, preparing to pivot or disengage if necessary. Vance moved slightly to block potential escape, reinforcing the trio's control, oblivious to the fact that an external observer had already determined the outcome. Sawyer's moment had arrived. Positioned just outside direct line of sight, he analyzed the space, the angles, the timing. His muscles coiled, ready to release the trained reflexes honed over decades. He calculated the trajectory, distance, and sequence necessary to neutralize the threat with minimal risk. His eyes flicked briefly to Maya, confirming she was prepared to step aside if needed. Everything was synchronized, patience giving way to precision. As Dixon raised the knife slightly, preparing to escalate further, Harper pressed into Maya's shoulder and Vance mirrored him from behind, the trio fully encircling her. The tension peaked, a tangible pressure that seemed to fill the warehouse. Maya's heart pounded, controlled but alert. She remained outwardly composed, a study in calm under pressure, while inside every nerve fired in readiness. In the span of a heartbeat, Sawyer acted. The first motion was swift, a strike to Dixon's wrist, sending the knife clattering across the floor. Harper staggered from a precise shoulder blow, losing balance, while Vance's legs were swept out, and he collapsed onto the padded floor. The entire sequence lasted less than 3 seconds, executed with surgical precision. The hostile trio was neutralized before they could fully process what had happened. Maya stepped back instinctively, shaken but unharmed. Her uniform was sliced, but she bore no physical injury. Her eyes met Sawyer, and a silent acknowledgement passed between them, calm, professional understanding. The danger had been diffused instantly, the lesson clear. Aggression and intimidation would be met with decisive action. The warehouse fell silent, except for heavy breathing and the distant echoes of other training exercises. The instructors arrived moments later, assessing the scene. The trio attempted to justify their actions as part of the exercise, but evidence, observation, and witnesses told a different story. They had crossed the line. Maya's calm under pressure and Sawyer's timely intervention demonstrated professionalism, discipline, and operational control. The incident would not only impact immediate training evaluations, but leave a lasting impression on unit dynamics, respect, and protocol. In those tense moments, Maya realized a profound truth. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Sawyer's presence had been decisive, yet her calm resilience had created the conditions for success. The hostile trio had underestimated both her resolve and the silent, watchful eye of a seasoned SEAL. Boundaries had been tested, lines had been crossed, and respect, hard-earned and unspoken, had begun to take shape. The warehouse fell into an eerie silence after the rapid intervention. The echo of clattering boots, a dropped training knife, and the soft thud of bodies hitting the padded floor reverberated off the concrete walls, leaving a tense stillness that seemed to stretch longer than it actually did. Maya Rourke stood back, her chest rising and falling in controlled breaths, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She was shaken but unharmed, her uniform torn but her dignity intact. Her analytical mind replayed every second of the confrontation, cataloging each movement, each gesture, each calculation that had saved her. Dixon, Harper, and Vance lay sprawled on the floor, stunned and momentarily incapacitated. Their attempts at intimidation had failed spectacularly, neutralized in a matter of seconds by Chief Petty Officer Blake Sawyer. The contrast between their aggression and his calm, precise control was stark, a lesson in professionalism, skill, and restraint that no simulation could replicate. For Maya, it was both shocking and oddly reassuring. She had anticipated danger, but the swiftness of Sawyer's response reinforced the reality of operational discipline in ways no textbook could convey. The instructors arrived, their footsteps echoing, voices sharp yet measured. They assessed the scene quickly, eyes moving from the incapacitated trainees to Maya and then to Sawyer. Each detail mattered: the torn uniform, the knife on the floor, the posture of every participant. One instructor, a tall, weathered man with decades of operational experience, stepped forward and surveyed the trio. "Explain," he said simply, his tone both commanding and expectant. Dixon, attempting to recover composure, muttered, "It was part of the drill. His protest was cut short by a raised hand. Harper and Vance exchanged nervous glances, realizing their justification would not hold against the evidence. Multiple witnesses from nearby teams had seen the aggressive intent, the deliberate intimidation, and the slicing of Maya's uniform. There was no room for ambiguity. The line between simulation and misconduct had been crossed, and the consequences would be swift. Maya felt a mix of emotions. Relief, yes, but also a quiet anger that she had been targeted simply for being an outsider, a civilian analyst among hardened operators. She took a moment to steady herself, brushing the dust from her uniform and adjusting her posture. She knew that any visible display of fear or panic would undermine not only her credibility but her professional standing. Maintaining composure was as much about protecting herself as it was about asserting her competence. Sawyer remained calm, his stance relaxed but alert. He had neutralized the threat efficiently, ensuring no one was seriously harmed. The instructors acknowledged his action with subtle nods, understanding the precision, timing, and judgment required in such situations. Discipline, they knew, was not about force alone, but about knowing when and how to act decisively. Sawyer's presence had been the stabilizing factor that prevented escalation, and his professionalism underscored the importance of intervention at the exact right moment. The trio was removed from the training area immediately. The instructors escorted them to administrative offices for further evaluation and potential disciplinary action. Their attempts to justify their behavior fell flat. Evidence, witness accounts, and physical demonstration of misconduct left no room for argument. Suspension from the training program was immediate pending a full investigation. The lesson was clear. Protocol and respect mattered above all, and no trainee, regardless of confidence or bravado, was allowed to cross established boundaries. Maya, escorted to the medical station, received a thorough assessment. Physically, she was unharmed, but the psychological impact lingered, a subtle tension that only time would fully dissipate. Yet she felt a quiet sense of vindication. She had endured intimidation without losing control, relying on her mind and instincts to navigate the scenario. The realization reinforced an essential truth. Composure, patience, and awareness often outweighed raw strength, even in environments dominated by physical prowess. Sawyer approached once Maya was cleared, his movements measured, his expression unreadable. "Are you hurt?" he asked simply. There was no condescension, no overemphasis on heroics, just a straightforward check for well-being, a reflection of professionalism and respect. Maya shook her head, her voice steady. "No, I'm fine." The moment was brief but significant. She understood that this acknowledgement, devoid of theatrics, was a form of validation that mattered more than words of praise. It was about competence, observation, and mutual respect. The rest of the day continued under heightened observation. The instructors emphasized the importance of boundaries, professionalism, and the role of intervention in training. The warehouse incident became a teaching moment for all participants. Other trainees, who had been skeptical of Maya's abilities, now viewed her with a combination of respect and cautious acknowledgement. Her composure under duress, coupled with Sawyer's decisive action, had transformed the dynamics of the group. In private, Maya reflected on the events, her mind processing both the threat and the response. She had faced intimidation head-on, analyzed every movement, and maintained control, demonstrating qualities that extended far beyond the parameters of the training exercise. The incident reinforced her understanding of operational psychology. Awareness, patience, and composure could be just as powerful as any physical skill. And having an experienced operative like Sawyer intervene underscored the importance of mentorship, oversight, and decisive action in high-risk environments. Sawyer returned to his observation post, silently reviewing the scenario in his mind. He considered every movement, every potential escalation, and every opportunity for intervention that he had executed or prepared for. Experience had taught him that training scenarios were often unpredictable, especially when human ego and insecurity were involved. His satisfaction was quiet, professional. He had protected a teammate, upheld standards, and maintained control, all without unnecessary force. By evening, the warehouse incident had become the topic of subdued discussion among instructors and trainees alike. No one spoke loudly, yet whispers carried respect and curiosity. Maya's reputation as composed, intelligent, and resilient was solidified. The hostile trio had learned, the observers had learned, and Maya had proven to herself as much as anyone that intellect, observation, and calm under pressure could match brute force. As she left the training facility, Maya paused to take a deep breath, inhaling the salt-tinged air from outside. She felt both exhaustion and exhilaration. The day had tested her limits physically, mentally, and emotionally, yet she had emerged intact. Sawyer's intervention had been decisive, but her own composure had created the conditions for success. The incident would leave a lasting mark on the training program, a reminder that boundaries existed for a reason, and that crossing them came with immediate consequences. Walking back toward her quarters, Maya felt a subtle shift within herself. Confidence had been tempered by experience, vigilance sharpened by risk, and respect earned not through aggression but through presence and control. She knew the coming days of training would test her further, but she also understood that she had survived a true initiation into a world that demanded both mental acuity and resilience. The warehouse incident, though brief, had revealed a powerful truth. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act decisively or remain composed in its presence. Maya's uniform was sliced, but her dignity and confidence were intact. Sawyer's intervention had been a lesson in operational precision and mentorship. And as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, Maya felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The boundaries had been tested, the line had been crossed, and the consequences had been enforced. Respect, vigilance, and professionalism had won the day, but the lessons of the warehouse would resonate far beyond the training grounds, shaping every interaction, every decision, and every challenge yet to come. The following morning, the Naval Amphibious Base Coronado was bathed in a cold, clear light, the Pacific breeze carrying a crisp freshness across the training grounds. Maya Rurk arrived early, adjusting her uniform, her mind still processing the events from the previous day. The warehouse incident had left ripples throughout the unit, reshaping dynamics, altering perceptions, and quietly demanding attention. Where skepticism had once lingered, subtle acknowledgement now replaced it. She noticed sidelong glances, cautious nods, and a silent deference that had previously been absent. Sawyer observed from a distance, his presence calm yet commanding, as though his eyes alone could assess competence without a word. He had stayed out of direct interaction the day prior to allow Maya's resilience to stand on its own. Now, he watched as the environment subtly shifted around her. The hostile trio, Dixon, Harper, and Vance, had been removed from exercises for disciplinary review, leaving the remaining trainees and Maya to navigate the rest of the day's drills. Maya's first exercise involved tactical decision-making under stress, a simulation in which she needed to analyze multiple variables while responding to real-time cues from instructors. Previously, her male-dominated peers might have dismissed her input, but now she noticed something different. Requests for suggestions, once reluctant or ignored, were met with attentive nods. Her analytical skills, combined with composure under pressure, were now being recognized as assets rather than weaknesses. Even those who had doubted her competence quietly took note. The morning drills emphasized situational awareness. Maya moved deliberately, scanning the terrain, observing microexpressions, noting angles of potential threat, and mentally mapping the layout for both offensive and defensive considerations. Each action she took was precise, efficient, and deliberate, not flashy, but unmistakably competent. Observers, including Sawyer, silently acknowledged her methodical approach. She was no longer a civilian thrown into unfamiliar territory. She had become a participant, a contributor, and most importantly, a professional whose presence mattered. During the next phase, a mock hostage extraction scenario, Maya was paired with a small team of trainees. Unlike the previous day, she was now viewed as a teammate rather than an outsider. Commands were respected, suggestions considered, and her input actively sought. The subtle shift in dynamics reflected more than just technical skill. It reflected trust, built through composure, intelligence, and a calm demeanor under previous duress. She realized respect, unlike fear, was earned quietly and deliberately, often without overt acknowledgement. Sawyer approached at one point, offering a rare word of guidance. "You're moving well," he said simply. "Keep scanning your environment, predict before reacting." His praise was measured, professional, devoid of unnecessary embellishment, yet it carried immense weight. Maya recognized the significance of the acknowledgement. It was validation from someone whose judgment mattered most. She nodded silently, internalizing the advice, aware that subtle mentorship often taught lessons far more enduring than immediate instruction. Throughout the day, Maya's confidence grew. She executed movements with precision, made decisions with clarity, and navigated obstacles efficiently. Other trainees, inspired or perhaps cautious after witnessing the previous incident, began treating her input with respect. Even in moments of stress, when decisions had to be made in seconds, Maya's composure remained unbroken. She observed her peers' reactions, noting shifts in posture, hesitation, and acknowledgement. The dynamics of the unit were evolving, and she was now a recognized part of that transformation. Lunch break offered a rare moment of quiet reflection. Maya sat on a bench overlooking the water, the rhythmic crash of waves mingling with distant shouts from ongoing exercises. She thought about the previous day, the slicing of her uniform, the subtle intimidation, and Sawyer's intervention. The memory no longer evoked fear, it evoked perspective. She understood that courage was measured not by the absence of danger, but by the ability to maintain composure, assess threats, and act decisively when required. After lunch, the unit returned to the training grounds for close-quarters combat exercises. The drills were physically demanding, testing strength, endurance, and coordination. Maya had trained for mental resilience, but now she applied her body with the same precision she had applied her mind. Every movement was deliberate, every stance calculated, every reaction measured. Trainees who had once doubted her capabilities now observed with cautious admiration. Sawyer watched quietly, noting how her previous experiences had sharpened her efficiency and tactical awareness. By late afternoon, the unit was tasked with a final exercise, a high-stress evacuation scenario involving simulated casualties. Maya's team was assigned to navigate a complex maze of obstacles while carrying injured teammates to safety. Her calm, analytical approach allowed her to anticipate pitfalls, direct team movements, and maintain cohesion under pressure. Instructions were clear, actions precise, and the scenario, despite its intensity, unfolded smoothly. The subtle nods, quick acknowledgments, and immediate compliance from her peers reinforced the respect she had earned. At the conclusion of the exercise, Sawyer approached once again, his expression calm but approving. "You've adapted well," he said. "Most would crumble under this kind of pressure. You maintained focus and controlled your team without panic. That's rare." Maya felt a quiet satisfaction, understanding that validation from someone of his caliber was earned through consistency, composure, and skill, not just luck or chance. Evening descended on the base, casting long shadows across the training grounds. The previous tension, the animosity from Dixon, Harper, and Vance, and the fear of escalation had all transformed into a sense of achievement and mutual acknowledgement. Maya walked with her head held high, recognizing not just the physical and mental lessons she had learned, but also the intangible victories: trust, respect, and recognition. That night, Maya reviewed her day's performance mentally, replaying exercises, decisions, and outcomes. She cataloged what had worked, what could be improved, and how her composure under pressure had influenced the perception of others. Every movement, every choice, and every interaction had reinforced her position within the unit. She realized that the warehouse incident had been the catalyst, a defining moment that had shifted her from an outsider to a recognized, respected participant. Sawyer, observing from his quarters, reflected on the progression as well. He had seen countless trainees succeed and fail under stress, but Maya's resilience, analytical precision, and ability to remain composed under direct threat stood out. Mentorship, he knew, was about subtle guidance, observation, and intervention at the right moments. Maya's performance now exemplified those principles. She had learned, adapted, and earned respect without over-reliance on physical strength or fear. By the end of the day, the unit had shifted. Where hostility and skepticism had once dominated, mutual respect, acknowledgement of skill, and subtle trust now prevailed. Maya had not only survived the ordeal but had transformed the environment through intelligence, composure, and quiet strength. Her reputation as a capable, resilient, and professional analyst was solidified. The hostile trio may have intended to intimidate, but their actions had inadvertently catalyzed a demonstration of competence, character, and strategic patience. As Maya returned to her quarters, the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting a warm glow over the water. She felt a quiet satisfaction, not of triumph over others, but of personal growth and earned respect. The challenges had tested her physically, mentally, and emotionally, yet she had emerged stronger, more confident, and recognized by peers and mentors alike. For Maya, the lessons extended beyond the confines of the training program: courage under pressure, the importance of composure, and the value of silent, earned respect. She had proven that strength was as much mental as it was physical, that leadership could be demonstrated without aggression, and that true skill often revealed itself through calm resilience under pressure. The day closed with a subtle shift in dynamics. Respect had been earned, trust had begun to form, and the unit, once fragmented by skepticism, had begun to function with cohesion and mutual acknowledgement. Maya had navigated hostility, threat, and physical challenge, and emerged as a participant whose presence mattered. The warehouse incident had been the crucible, today had been the forge. The next morning dawned over the naval amphibious base with a pale orange glow, casting long, intricate shadows across the training grounds. Maya Rourke arrived early, as always, her uniform crisp, her mind clear and focused. The warehouse incident was no longer a point of tension. It was a turning point, a lesson that had shifted the perception of her among the trainees and instructors alike. The previous days had been transformative, but today promised the ultimate test, a final, high-intensity operational drill that would measure skill, composure, and leadership under extreme conditions. The briefing room was alive with tension, muted conversations blending with the metallic clink of gear being adjusted. The instructors outlined the exercise, a full-scale mock operation involving a hostage scenario in a complex, multi-roomed facility. The exercise would simulate hostile engagement, decision-making under stress, and rapid extraction in a chaotic environment. Maya listened intently, noting every detail: entry points, cover positions, potential obstacles, and the roles assigned to each team member. She had already developed mental models for navigation, response contingencies, and communication signals, ensuring she could anticipate problems before they occurred. Sawyer entered silently, his presence commanding immediate attention. He was the embodiment of discipline and experience, a figure whose reputation alone demanded respect. He did not speak at length, only offering concise advice to Maya. Predict, don't react, keep your team coordinated, observe, then act. The brevity of the guidance reinforced a core lesson. In high-stakes situations, clarity, observation, and timing were far more important than raw force or impulsive reactions. Maya absorbed every word, internalizing the strategy while preparing to execute flawlessly. The teams moved to the simulated operational site, a labyrinth of rooms, hallways, and narrow corridors designed to test situational awareness, coordination, and tactical decision-making. Maya's team, now cohesive and respectful of her input, moved efficiently. Each member followed her subtle guidance, which was calm, precise, and anticipatory. Their previous skepticism had vanished, replaced with quiet acknowledgement that Maya's insight and composure were valuable assets. The drill commenced with sudden alarms blaring, lights flickering, and simulated gunfire echoing through the facility. Adrenaline surged, yet Maya's body remained steady. She had trained for moments like this, where chaos could overwhelm both mind and body. Every movement was deliberate, every glance purposeful. She led her team through the maze of rooms, identifying potential threats, signaling positions, and maintaining communication through concise hand signals. Her composure became a stabilizing force for others, transforming panic into coordinated action. Suddenly, one of the trainees signaled a mock casualty. The scenario escalated, a hostage separated from the team and injured during the engagement. Maya assessed the situation instantly, noting the safest path for extraction, potential blind spots, and the positioning of simulated hostiles. Her instructions were precise yet calm. Cover left. I'll secure the target. Maintain visual on all entry points. The team executed flawlessly, trusting her judgment implicitly. This trust, earned over days of observation and previous incidents, was now absolute. Sawyer observed silently from a distance, noting her control and efficiency. He saw the same qualities that had saved her in the warehouse incident: analytical precision, calm under pressure, and strategic awareness. She was now not only capable but influential, her presence a linchpin in the success of the operation. Every action Maya took reinforced the lesson that leadership was demonstrated through intelligence, composure, and the ability to integrate the team seamlessly into operational flow. The scenario intensified. A simulated hostile force attempted a flanking maneuver, creating confusion and potential chaos. Maya's mental mapping allowed her to anticipate the movement before it became a threat. She adjusted team positions, coordinated cover, and provided precise directions without raising her voice. The operation was executed with minimal error, despite the escalating pressure. Observers and instructors noted the difference between her approach and that of other teams. While others relied on brute force or impulsive reactions, Maya demonstrated strategic foresight and measured control. At one point, the mock hostage struggled, simulating real panic. Maya maintained her composure, using calm verbal cues and controlled movements to stabilize the situation. Her hands were steady, her posture firm, and her focus unwavering. The team, in response to her clear guidance, coordinated the extraction efficiently, maintaining security and minimizing risk. The synchronization between observation, decision-making, and execution became evident, a tangible result of earned respect, training, and mentorship. The final phase involved exiting the facility under simulated threat conditions. Smoke-filled corridors, alarms blared, and sensory overload intensified. Trainees who might have panicked in similar conditions moved cohesively, responding to Maya's subtle gestures and hand signals. Every step was calculated, every angle covered, every potential hazard addressed. Maya's presence had transformed what could have been chaos into a controlled, coordinated operation. Her previous experiences, the intimidation, the warehouse incident, and Sawyer's guidance, had converged into a practical demonstration of her capabilities. At the simulated extraction point, the exercise concluded. Instructors debriefed the teams, highlighting efficiency, coordination, and composure under pressure. Maya's performance received explicit recognition, not just for technical skill, but for leadership, situational awareness, and the ability to maintain operational control in high-stress environments. Even those who had previously doubted her competence now acknowledged her capabilities openly. She had not only survived the challenges, but had elevated the performance of those around her through calm, strategic guidance. Sawyer approached quietly afterward, his expression calm but approving. "You've integrated observation and leadership seamlessly," he said. "Most falter under this kind of pressure, but you maintained focus and guided your team effectively. That's exceptional." Maya's response was measured. "Thank you. The training and the challenges along the way prepared me. I just focused on keeping the team coordinated." His subtle nod conveyed immense respect, mentorship acknowledged through validation, not theatrics. The day concluded with reflection and assessment. The unit, transformed from the previous tension-filled days, now functioned with cohesion, mutual respect, and understanding of individual and collective capabilities. Maya had earned her place not through intimidation or assertiveness, but through intelligence, composure, and strategic foresight. Her presence now carried authority, trust, and recognition from peers and mentors alike. Walking away from the training grounds, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The warehouse incident had been the crucible, testing her under direct threat. The subsequent days had been the forge, shaping her into a respected, capable, and reliable member of the team. Sawyer's mentorship had been subtle but transformative, demonstrating the importance of guidance, observation, and intervention in high-stakes environments. Maya reflected on the journey. Respect had been earned through calm resilience and competence. Trust had been solidified through consistent performance under pressure. The lessons of observation, anticipation, and coordination had been reinforced through practical experience. She had demonstrated that intelligence, strategy, and composure could influence outcomes as much as strength or aggression. As the sun set over the base, casting long shadows across the water and training grounds, Maya understood a deeper truth. The path to respect, trust, and competence was rarely immediate. It was forged through challenge, tested under duress, and proven through consistent, measured action. The final drill had not only tested her abilities but validated her approach, cementing her position within the unit and ensuring that she would be recognized as a capable and respected operative in future operations. The final day of the training cycle arrived with a quiet intensity that contrasted sharply with the chaos of previous drills. The sun rose slowly over the naval amphibious base Coronado, casting golden light across the training grounds. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of salt from the nearby ocean, and a calm breeze ruffled the uniforms of trainees as they gathered for the final debrief. Maya Rourke approached the assembly with the same composed demeanor she had maintained throughout the past week, her posture straight, eyes alert, and mind focused on the culmination of both challenges and lessons learned. The warehouse incident, once a source of tension and uncertainty, had become a defining moment in the narrative of her training experience. What could have been a humiliating or dangerous encounter had instead served as a crucible, testing her patience, composure, and ability to navigate unpredictable aggression. The aggressive trio, Dixon, Harper, and Vance, had been disciplined and removed from certain exercises, leaving a visible mark on the unit's understanding of boundaries and respect. Maya's calm under pressure had not only earned her safety in that moment, but had established a precedent for how professionalism and resilience were to be regarded within the group. The instructors began the debrief, addressing the entire assembly. They highlighted the importance of mental discipline, situational awareness, and team coordination in high-stress environments. As they spoke, Maya reflected on the past days, the challenges, the intimidation, and the victories, and recognized the growth she had achieved, both in skill and confidence. Where once she had been underestimated or overlooked, she was now acknowledged as a capable, reliable, and respected member of the unit. Sawyer approached her quietly as the instructors finished their remarks. His presence was calm yet commanding, a silent signal of both respect and approval. "You've come a long way," he said, voice low but firm. "Most people would have lost composure under the pressure you faced. You didn't just survive, you guided your team, maintained clarity, and executed decisions with precision. That's what sets you apart." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of his acknowledgement. It was not casual praise, but a rare validation from someone whose judgment carried authority and experience. The unit was then asked to perform one final exercise, a simulated full-scale operation combining all the skills learned: intelligence analysis, tactical awareness, rapid response, and team coordination. Maya's team, now cohesive and trusting, moved seamlessly through the complex scenario. Every decision was deliberate, every action calculated, and every movement communicated with precision. The operation involved rescuing mock hostages, neutralizing threats, and navigating a series of simulated obstacles, including unstable terrain, smoke-filled corridors, and unpredictable variables. Maya's leadership and composure were central to the team's success, guiding them through each challenge efficiently and without unnecessary risk. Observers, including instructors and senior personnel, noted the contrast between Maya's performance and that of other teams. Where others relied on speed, brute force, or impulsive decision-making, Maya's approach emphasized analysis, patience, and coordination. Her decisions were proactive rather than reactive, anticipating potential complications before they occurred. The operation concluded successfully, with the team extracting all hostages safely and neutralizing simulated threats with minimal errors. The execution was flawless, a testament to training, intelligence, and earned respect. Following the exercise, the instructors conducted a final review of each trainee. They emphasized not only technical skill, but also the qualities that defined an effective operative: composure under stress, strategic thinking, leadership, and the ability to integrate team dynamics effectively. Maya's performance was highlighted as exemplary. Her calm resilience during the warehouse incident, her analytical approach to tactical scenarios, and her ability to guide her team with clarity and precision were praised explicitly. It was a public acknowledgement of both skill and character, confirming the recognition she had quietly earned over the course of the week. Maya's peers, who had once doubted her capabilities, now approached her with subtle deference and acknowledgement. Conversations that had previously carried skepticism were now laced with respect, curiosity, and occasionally admiration. Some trainees asked for guidance, others for insight into her decision-making process, and all recognized the value of composure and strategic thinking in high-stress situations. The transformation of perception, from outsider to respected participant, was complete. Sawyer observed quietly from the periphery, noting the shift in dynamics. His mentorship, subtle but pivotal, had allowed Maya to demonstrate resilience and competence while maintaining the integrity of the training environment. He understood that true operational skill was not only about reaction, but about preparation, observation, and the ability to influence outcomes strategically. Maya had internalized these lessons and applied them consistently, solidifying both her skill set and her credibility. As the formal ceremony concluded, Maya was awarded a commendation for outstanding performance and composure during the training cycle. The recognition was both formal and symbolic, an acknowledgement of her ability to navigate threats, lead effectively, and maintain operational excellence under pressure. The applause from her peers, instructors, and observers was sincere, not merely polite, reflecting earned respect and admiration. For Maya, the award was less about accolades and more about the validation of her resilience, preparation, and composure. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the training grounds, Maya walked alone along the edge of the base, reflecting on the week's events. The warehouse incident, once a moment of fear and tension, now represented a turning point, a trial by fire that had revealed her capacity for patience, observation, and decisive action. Sawyer's mentorship, the discipline enforced on aggressive peers, and the exercises that tested every skill she possessed had all converged into a cohesive narrative of growth, respect, and operational readiness. In the quiet of the evening, Maya recognized the deeper significance of her journey. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to maintain focus and act with clarity under pressure. Respect was not demanded through force, but earned through consistent demonstration of skill, integrity, and composure. Leadership was not about aggression or visibility, but about guiding others strategically and effectively, particularly in moments of chaos. The lessons learned extended far beyond training exercises, embedding themselves in a mindset prepared for real-world challenges. As she returned to her quarters, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The week had tested her mentally, physically, and emotionally, yet she had emerged stronger, more confident, and recognized as a capable member of the unit. The dynamics of the team had shifted, respect had been earned, and trust had been solidified. She had faced intimidation, navigated threats, and demonstrated leadership under pressure, and the results were undeniable. The base fell quiet, the sounds of waves and distant training drills fading into the night. Maya stood for a moment, reflecting on the lessons learned, the challenges overcome, and the growth achieved. The warehouse incident had been a crucible, the drills a forge, and now, at the end of the training cycle, she stood as a participant who had earned not only recognition but respect, trust, and a sense of belonging within a demanding and disciplined environment. The story of Maya Rurk, the civilian analyst thrust into a world of intensity, threat, and high-stakes training, had come full circle. She had been tested, challenged, and provoked, yet she had emerged stronger, smarter, and more resilient. The respect she had earned, the composure she had maintained, and the trust she had cultivated were lasting legacies of a journey defined by courage, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. In the end, the lesson was clear. Strength is measured not only in action but in patience, observation, and the quiet mastery of fear. Maya's uniform had been sliced, her nerves tested, and her resolve challenged, but she had proven that true competence was as much about mind and strategy as it was about skill and force. And as the night settled over the base, the story concluded not with triumphal fanfare but with the quiet dignity of a lesson learned, a respect earned, and a future defined by capability, courage, and composure.